your source for everything paranormal. Para X. The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Merry meet and merry part, bright the cheeks and warm the heart. For tread the circle thrice about, to keep unwelcome spirits out. Bide within the law you must, in perfect love and perfect trust. Mind the threefold laws you should, 3 times bad and 3 times good. These 8 words the read fulfill, and ye harm none, do what ye will.
Welcome to Stirring the Cauldron on the Para X Radio Network. And now, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
Merry meet everybody, and welcome to Stirring the Cauldron on Para X Radio. My opening song tonight, We Didn't Start the Fire by Billy Joel, is no way inferring that my friend, Hollywood historian, owner of findadeath.com and Dearly Departed Tours, Scott Michaels, likes to heat things up in any way. However, he's not the least bit shy about speaking his mind, and when something strikes a chord, it will be spoken or written about, and that's what tonight's show is all about. But before I forget, for those of you listening live who live in the Southern California area, Scott has 2 tickets to the Museum of Death that he's offering as a giveaway tonight, and that'll be later on during the show, where Scott will be asking a trivia question, and when he comes up with some really good ones, guys, so it's not something you can Google really quick. He's brilliant. But maybe he's so good at trivia because he's a trivia question himself in Trivial Pursuit. Anyway, the first person in chat with the correct answer will win the tickets, and he'll explain a little bit more about that as we get into this. But for anyone who wants to join in and isn't in the Para X chat room with us right now, there's plenty of time to still get here, so come over to www.para-x.com and click on the live chat tab, and you'll be in the running. All right, so Scott and I were going back and forth trying to choose a topic for tonight, and as many of you know, with him, the possibilities are limitless. But he brought up the subject of respecting history because there are some practices in Hollywood that aren't so great as far as iconic things falling by the wayside. So I'm dusting off my soapbox and sliding over to Scott tonight. So Scott, step right up, and I've got an extra long handle on the spoon so you can help me stir the cauldron from way up there.
What a great intro. Hello, Marla.
Well, why were you suppressing chuckles then? You could have chuckled. That's okay. I like making you laugh.
I guess I do have an opinion or two, don't
I? Yeah, 1 or 2. Heard a couple from time to time. But that's besides the point. I mean, if anybody knows Hollywood, it's you. And let me start off by saying that the term, to me anyway, Hollywood history is in some ways an oxymoron because in many cases it's selective history. In other countries, history is revered and honored. Buildings stand for hundreds and hundreds of years, and people would call it a horror to tear them down and build a mini mall on the site, for example. And in Hollywood, we preserve film. We write about history in books. There are TV shows made about it. But the tangible stuff often falls by the wayside. It's either torn down, like so many of Hollywood's historical landmarks, or in some cases sold at auction to the highest bidder and never seen again. And you and I were talking the other day about Debbie Reynolds' vast collection of magnificent Hollywood memorabilia, which apparently is up for sale. So jump in and let's talk about that for a minute.
Well, it's sort of, Hollywood is an unusual place. People don't take it seriously because, they make comedies and they make silly movies and, it's difficult for people, not in America to really take very seriously because it could be so silly. Of course, there are, not so silly projects that come out of Hollywood. But because it's almost an exclusive American, I think it's one of our largest exports, our films, but people think they're kind of, I don't know, follies, I guess. So people don't take our locations in Hollywood or items from Hollywood very seriously, because it's so lighthearted in a sense. You can ooh and ah over, the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang car for some reason, but it's become an icon, and it's such a neat thing to see, and it brings back such happy memories. But people don't realize that it's a chunk of history. That should be revered.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad to see Hollywood physically disappearing in dump trucks, and some of those things that have disappeared don't have the best of memories attached to them. However, they do figure into the entire history of the town, just like any town, just like Boston, just like London, just like Paris. We all have our individual, very individual and specific histories.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've got a lot of history in your own home from some very grisly places, and we're very much unlike each other in that, because I'm really even hesitant to pick up a garage sale thing or something from an antique store because about what I think might be attached to it. But, I don't think I've ever asked you this, but is there anything so awful out there that you could possibly get your hands on that you would not add to your collection?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there are so many. When you talk about awful, most people refer to murders or things like that, and although everyone that knows me knows that my own personal obsession are the Tate LaBianca murders of 1969. Now, I find everything about those murders really interesting. And there's nothing really I would hesitate to have in my home except for anything directly having to do with Manson. And anything, that he actually has anything to do with, no, not interested. But the others, I can sort of see how, the people, the hippies, the ones that did these murders under Manson could have been involved. I don't condone it, but I kind of understand how the perfect storm could have happened. Therefore, I can kind of see them, and it might make people angry for me to say this, but kind of on a very small scale, victims in their own way of this man. So I can almost see their side of things, but with Manson himself, no. And also, I'm not quick to label people as evil. I think that most people that commit atrocious crimes, I wouldn't call them evil. I call them sick. But evil is such a throwaway term anymore. So, but Manson, that's probably where I draw the line.
Okay. Well, there is a lot of interest in possessions that may be haunted these days that people have. John Zapp's terrific new show, Haunted Collector, on the Sci-Fi Channel, and his Museum of Haunted Items is a prime example of that. And in most cases, haunted items are haunted by everyday people who have an attachment to something they cherished. Here in Hollywood, though, I think that goes a step farther because actors are an ego-driven lot, and the thought that something of theirs might be socked away for eternity in someone's closet or vault could cause more activity around some of those items in order to call attention to them for fear they may be forgotten. Do you kind of think along those lines as well, that Hollywood stuff might be a little bit more spookified?
It just depends on how they... for instance, Debbie Reynolds had probably the most famous costume in history, possibly most famous piece of clothing in history, Marilyn Monroe's 7-year-itch dress. Now, realistically, Marilyn probably spent, a day or two in it, with a few hours a day doing that scene, yet we all know it now. So I would guess that Marilyn may have, an interest in it because it became so associated with her. But I think everyone else's combined interest in it gives it more power, which sounds sort of, I don't know, maybe silly to some people. But I think that there are so many people thinking about it that I think for some reason, all these different thoughts being aimed at it gives it some sort of power is not the word I want to use, but vibes would be I think one that I think would be appropriate. You couldn't not with everyone. It's like the ruby slippers. With everyone, sort of revering them in a certain way. It's got to pick up on some of that energy being aimed at it. And whether Judy Garland herself, zooms toward those slippers, I don't know. But they have become quite iconically associated with her. So I wouldn't be too surprised.
Well, actually, it's not Judy Garland that's zooming towards the slippers. It's my evil cousin, the Wicked Witch of the West, that usually goes after them after midnight. But that's a whole other story. We don't have to go there. I've got a question from the chat room, and I just want to say if anybody else has a question for Scott, just send me a private message, and I'll pass those along, because, Scott, the chat room is full, and I see a lot of people that know you. So this is good. Watch what you say. Be careful. But then again, if they know you, you don't need to worry. Never mind. But first question is coming in from Dawn Shy. And she was wondering what you think about the show Hollywood Treasures. I think it just started recently on Sci-Fi. It's the auction house that keeps trying to keep Hollywood alive, but they're cashing in on the things that they're selling.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, they are at the forefront of all of this sudden interest in sudden mass interest in Hollywood because they've given the opportunity to people who have these items to make some money off of them, and understandably so. I mean, like there were these people that had that carpet bag purse that Julie Andrews used in Mary Poppins, and they were taking it to the beach with them, and it's sort of most people would just die because it's not in a air-controlled room, a climate-controlled room, and they were just it was in their basement, and they mentioned or they got in touch with the show, and the show came and picked it up, and they ended up getting something like $200,000 for it. I understand having those pieces, and if they're just laying around, like just junk, why not make some money off them? But on the other hand, it's quite heartbreaking to see these things being, sort of thrown into the wind after they've been just discovered. It's a real shame that these things couldn't be gathered in one place. They should make it mandatory that these people who auction these things or win these auctions, first of all, not be able to remove them from the country, because I think that's just borderline a sin for things like that to leave the country, but also to gather them once every 10 years in one place and actually be able to see these things. I think the show is interesting in the fact that we probably never get a chance to see these things ever again. But on the other hand, these guys are making a fortune. This auction house, they got over $1 million in commission on that Marilyn Monroe dress. So I wouldn't say they're masquerading their interest in Hollywood history. They probably do have a big interest in it, but it seems like they're whoring it out, which sounds really awful. But there, I said it.
Yeah, well, it's a shame, because I know that for some reason when George Burns died, I got a catalog from Sotheby's about all of his stuff that was going up for auction. And I mean, that catalog was thick. And I mean, of course, a lot of it wasn't anything particularly special, but there were a lot of people out there that would have, liked a piece of George Burns, just like, people want a piece of a lot of people that have passed in one way or the other. But looking through the catalog, I was kind of sad about it, because it's one thing to do like what I did and what I'm sure you've done at other times. When I went to the Ambassador Hotel when they were having that big auctioning things off, I mean, I got silly things like 1930s typewriter and an ice cream sundae glass or something. But to have a piece of something that somebody touched, means a lot. But you often wonder why the families just decide to go that route and just, okay, well, let's auction this off. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about that.
It is sort of, I mean, it's odd because George is gone. His immediate descendants, well, he had I think 2 adopted children. Who's going to want George's old crappy Formica desk? I understand that. I would want it, actually. But,
I was going to say, don't you have somebody's door in your doorway up on the top of
But I find more fun in when George's house was being renovated. When he died, his estate was already taken care of. So, it was, as you probably remember, his stuff was up for auction less than a year after he died, and I know his house was being gutted probably within 2 months of his death, and they probably sold it before he died. But I found the things that I treasure the most are when I kind of just walked into his house when it was being renovated. Nobody even asked me what I was doing there. I just walked in, and I found a light switch, and I grabbed it because it was part of sort of George's everyday life, and that was sort of more important to me than one of his best suits or one of his toupees or something like that, which are more iconically associated with Burns. But I like the mundane. I like this, like you said, the ice cream, the hot fudge sundae cup that Ethel Kennedy may have used. I like that because it's just more of a day-to-day normal thing that we all have. We all have associated with this, and thus my, some people would say, obsession with people's mailboxes. Well, I find it interesting because it's just something we all have, and because that's George Burns' mailbox, that makes it interesting, a little bit more interesting. Yet, he was just a guy that went and got his mail every day.
All right, here's the mailbox question. Do you think the mailboxes, the style of the mailboxes, are a reflection of the people that own them?
Well, that's interesting. I don't really think so. I'd like to. No, I never really thought about that. But no, from what I've seen, I haven't been really impressed with anybody's mailboxes, to be honest with you.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about, since we're talking about George Burns' door, and we know you kind of,
liberated
things from other places. Let's talk about Lucy's wall. What did you liberate off the wall, or the bricks, or what?
Again, when she died, she was, I don't know, her estate must have been a mess when she died, Lucy's. And the house on Roxbury Drive sat there for, I don't know, 6-7 years before it was sold finally and occupied after it was gutted and completely renovated. And with George's house, there's nothing that looks different on the outside, but Lucy's looks considerably different. A lot of people even think it's a brand new house, but it's not. Right. But there was a famous episode of Lucy, the I Love Lucy show, where Lucy and Ethel take a tour of the Stars homes, and they stop in front of what is Jimmy Stewart's house in real life, and they walk across the street to what is Lucy's real house in real life, and in the show it was Richard Widmark's house, and she was going to grab a grapefruit from his back tree, and she falls over the fence. Well, that was actually filmed in Lucy's house. So when they were doing this mass renovation and they replaced the wall, I grabbed a bunch of these bricks because I thought it was kind of neat because these bricks have been on TV. It's an iconic Lucy episode, and to look at it, you're sitting in my house and you look at this stupid brick, you wouldn't think anything of it, but when you explain what it is, it's kind of neat, and it gives it a personality of its own. And the one thing I always say is that I don't have millions of dollars to spend on a house, but I can grab a brick, and that's just as important to me.
Liberation is free. I mean, things that would just get tossed, why not? I mean,
Exactly.
I know that you've been to weirder places, kind of getting, like, stranger things that people might not have expected, like at Alice Ghostley's house and stuff.
Oh, yeah. We draw a veil. That one may have been crossing a line from people.
Well, yeah. But, I mean, it's still, but you're giving those things a place to have another life, I mean, you're not doing a bad thing. You're not stealing. You're liberating and things that would be thrown out. But a lot of people might be afraid to have some of that stuff. I mean, the bricks, the Manson fireplace bricks that you have are a little bit off-putting, as far as I'm concerned. If you recall, they were in that back room that you have, and I wouldn't even walk in there because they were there. But that's just me. But it's one of those weird things that I think we all have a different sensibility about how we feel about things. Now, you have some things that I would not also have besides bricks, but I worry that things may carry bad vibes, like bits of the Hindenburg or pieces of famous car crashes or plane crashes, and you do have some of those things. And you're not the least bit, not too concerned about them, are you?
No, because I believe that. I mean, I'm concerned in that the fact that I think it's important to preserve them. It is part of the history of these incidents that we all remember. Most of us remember. I mean, the piece of the Hindenburg, one of the most horrific events of last century. But what would you do with a piece of the Hindenburg? You wouldn't throw it out. Would you bury it? Possibly some people would. But to me, I'd want to see it. So I think as long as you treat the items with respect, I think that it's understood by anything that may be associated with them. And I think that most of the things that may be associated with them would be what you'd say residual energy. Just sort of because these actual stones, these pieces of airplanes or cars where these terrible things had happened, probably, some horrible things echoed off of them. I mean, there were horrific things that these items heard. So I don't think that those things are they go away. I do think, though, as long as they're treated with respect, I'm not threatened by them.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we were talking about some things that get put away and they were on display for a while or whatever. And one of the things that we were mentioning was Jackie Kennedy's bloodstained dress that she insisted on wearing to the funeral as well, right?
She wore it she never took it off. So when they flew back to Washington with Kennedy's body, she made sure to keep it on during the swearing in of the new president because she, quote, wanted them to see what they did to him, end quote. Mm-hmm. So when, she was making a point, and to me, I get sort of, I don't want to say upset, but I want to see it. She wanted me to see it. It shows up in pictures, but it's hidden in the National Archives for, I don't know, maybe 100 years after Caroline Kennedy dies. And, there is an emotional I understand why she wouldn't want to be reminded of that event, but then she's Caroline Kennedy. How could she not? There have been full-length features made about her father's assassination, and probably, 24 hours a day in some place in the world, they're showing some sort of JFK documentary. This is our history, too, and I feel it's important for it to be acknowledged, and I want to see that pink suit. I don't think it's fair that it be locked away for everybody to not see until... I'll never see it in my lifetime, and it makes me angry. When they had more recently in Las Vegas, the Los Angeles homicide detectives had an exhibit on Los Angeles homicides, some of the more well-known homicides. So Troy and my friend Jody and I drove to Vegas immediately and stood in line a couple of hours to get into this room. And I walked in the room, and there was the Manson getaway car. And then under these glass boxes were, I just a rope and a fork and a gun. And we all knew immediately what they were. There were no labels on them saying what they were, but they were the murder weapons from the Tate LaBianca homicides. And they also had the O.J. Simpson glove, and they also had the gun that Christian Brando used to kill his sister's boyfriend, Dag Drolet. So... these things have been locked away in boxes in the district attorney's office for decades, and it was really refreshing to see them out in the open because they've become so iconic that they deserve to be seen, I believe. Even Debbie Tate, Sharon's little sister, said, I understand why people would want to see them and they could learn something from them, but, I wish they would have given us a heads up, and that I understand, too. But the idea that the Kennedy family demanded that Bobby Kennedy's jacket and shirt, which he wore when he was shot, with, the bullet holes in them, be removed from the exhibit because they thought it in poor taste. Now, my issue is that it's history, and I'm sorry it was Bobby Kennedy's, clothing that he wore when he was shot. However, it's our history, and I don't think it's fair that they happen to keep it to themselves because it changed the world, or it changed America, certainly. So yeah, I'm a little bit possessive of those items myself, even though they aren't mine. But I think we deserve to see them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of them just magically go poof because I don't see why people have bragging rights. Well, I've got this and I've got that. They'll spend millions of dollars to have something just to brag about it, not to display it, not to show it, not to do anything except, pat themselves on the back that they have it and they had the money to get it. And I think sometimes that's for the wrong reason.
This auction this Debbie Reynolds thing was particularly heartbreaking because these items, they are leaving the country. Marilyn's dress will be gone from America forever, and the Judy Garland ruby slippers, although they weren't used in the film, they were historical in the sense that they were part of the Wizard of Oz film's history, and it's a sin to have these things leave the country. It's the equivalent of, I think, tomb raiding. Taking King Tut's things and having them. At least we can see them. They bring them around once in a while,
Right.
But it's terrible that just goes to the highest bidder.
Well, I've got a question from the chat room. Actually, it's kind of a double-edged question. It's from Cece, and she wants to know if you ever go into sensory overload with objects of tragedy or objects with any surge of emotion. And then she's also asking if you have artwork of serial killers like Gacy, and do you get impressions from them?
Well, I guess I'm just not. I'm giggling when we're talking about Gacy. And I don't mean to belittle what had happened, but I do. Yeah, I do have a Gacy painting that I acquired from Gacy himself when he was still alive. I think that this painting was part of his life for probably a morning, and although it came from his mind, I guess I'm just not that sensitive towards things like that. I've never really felt anything from it. It was just sort of something that was a curiosity to me. But I've had people in my home, as you know, because you've been in my home, that have walked in and there's just so many things, so much energy flying around from so many different things in here that I know that some people are very uncomfortable with it. A lot of the stuff is gone. I put it in storage because I got tired of feeling like I was living in a museum, and I wanted to make my home more of a home. So I rented a storage unit, and most of these things are in storage now, and I guess that's probably made it a little bit more comfortable for some people to be in my house. But personally, I think the vibes that come from these items mostly are coming from me because I find so much interesting in them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that you're not quite as numb to that kind of stuff as you might admit, because don't forget, I've been on investigations with you. And I've heard you talk about the hairs standing up on your back, and I've seen the puzzled look on your face. And I remember one incident at the Wax Museum when we were there. We were sitting in the dark, and everybody was somewhere else, and I got up to go join them, and you immediately stood up, and you weren't going to stay there by yourself. If I was going, you were going with me because you didn't want to be alone in the dark, kind of thing.
Well, in a wax museum, Marla. In the dark, after midnight. Yeah, it was a bit creepy anyway. But yeah,
I expect that from me. Where are you going? I'm going with you. Okay. Yeah. Big guy scared me that you reacted to that. But but you do. I mean, there have been other times that we've been out doing things that you actually have felt something, and you're not one to openly admit it too much, because then that might mean that you might really are feeling something. But you do. You do.
Oh, no, definitely. I mean, being around you and going to investigations certainly has opened my eyes and my opinion about the supernatural or the paranormal. And and I have definitely had experiences. I've told you about my own in depth, just in my own home. So I being with you, I think it's really opened it up to my sort of being able to understand it and believe that it exists.
I think I'm taking that as a compliment. I'm just not entirely sure yet, but it'll
No, me neither. Me neither.
We have another question from chat. See how I'm segueing out of that really quick. From Reverend Tim, he wants to know if you've ever felt anything when you visited any of the Manson sites.
I don't think so, because most of the Manson sites are, I'm looking out, from the outside in. If I was actually able to enter, one of the homes where the murders occurred, or, that would have been really, I'll bet you I would have felt something then, at least just the awe of something I've been studying for years, and all of a sudden being in that place. But, when I was at the Spahn Ranch, or where the Spahn Ranch used to be, which is now just an empty field, some people get really freaked out by that. I never did, and the Barker Ranch either. I was freaked out by the Barker Ranch because we were in the middle of the desert, 20 miles from any people, and I was afraid to turn off the engine of my car because I was afraid, if it didn't start up, I was really, in trouble. But I guess I'm trying to think of any situations where I really have felt any vibes, and I'm usually so caught up in the moment of being there and just thinking all that happened right here, be it whichever place that I've been to. If I would have sat there and really soaked it in, I may have felt more, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Well, all I know is when we did that investigation at David Oman's house that day, I didn't feel anything much in his house, but when I went out to stretch my legs and walk towards the big gate that blocks the actual the murder site, I felt a heaviness in that area. And, sometimes you wonder, is it my imagination just because I know what this is or something? But it really did feel a little bit creepy to me. And I know before they even built it, you took me up there years ago, when everything was still wide open, and the house was there. I guess it was vacant or something, as I recall. And there just is something there. I mean, it's like you said, probably residual, but it's really uncomfortable.
So, yeah, I mean, again, I'm usually caught up in the awe of being there. But when there's a very famous phrase in the book, Helter Skelter, it was so quiet you could hit the ice in the cocktail shakers. And unless you're up there at nighttime, you don't realize how true that is, because, and you and I have been up there at nighttime, and it's really so quiet. It feels like there are, people have pillows against your ears because it's so quiet. And realizing when you step out of David Oman's house, his front door, and you're on that road that those killers walked, and it was just like that. It was that quiet. It was that dark, and they walked by that very place. You can't not get creeped out by that. To me personally, I don't know if that's it's paranormal or if it's just freaky. But it certainly it certainly provokes an emotional reaction.
It does. I think this is a good time to break in and talk about the tickets for the Museum of Death, where they came from, thanking everybody that's involved, and you're going to ask the trivia question. But first of all, I want you to just give a brief explanation of what the Museum of Death is.
Well, the Museum of Death used to be in San Diego, and it moved up to Los Angeles. It closed for many years, and it opened again in Los Angeles about 2 years ago. J.D. and Kathy are the proprietors of the Museum of Death, and they have collected over the years a fascinating display. Their first room that you walk into is a funeral display. They have caskets. They have embalming equipment from over the years. They have all the different sorts of funereal or embalming paraphernalia you can imagine, and they show the process of how it began in back when they started embalming people, and back when funeral parlors were actually parlors in people's homes and things like that. And then they have a celebrity room, which is where I gravitate towards, and they have displays involving the Tate murders and the Black Dahlia and some of the more well-known iconic crimes. And then they have interspersed through the museum are different displays of different murders and deaths, body bags, and that sort of thing. They have they have one of Jane Mansfield's dogs that was preserved through taxidermy that was in the car with her. And I find that fascinating. So, and also they have a couple of the bunk beds from the Heaven's Gate house, where that the Heaven's Gate cult committed suicide, hoping to hop on the comet back. I forget what year that was, and also cans of Comet cleanser that were in the house. I mean, how funny is that? No, it's a fascinating museum, and my good friend Mark Masick, who is the author of a book called Hollywood Remains to Be Seen, which is now available on ebook from his website cemeteryguide.com. Mark provided this trivia question to win these 2 tickets to the Museum of Death. Now, I would ask that if anyone wanted to enter this, this contest, that they live in the Southern California area, because the tickets are only good this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And if you don't live here, I would just ask that you keep the answer to yourself, so somebody who lives here that can actually use them can use them, or if you know somebody, if you win the contest, you at least know somebody in the LA area, in the Hollywood area that would use these tickets, because it would be a shame for them to go to waste.
And what we're going to do, hang on one second, is we're going to ask the question, and then the first person in the chat room that gets the right answer will be the winner. Now, go back to saying, and I think, by the way, Mark is in the chat room.
Oh, good. Oh, okay. Well, hey, Mark. Remember, his Hollywood Remains to Be Seen. It's like it was the first book to cover all the Hollywood cemeteries. It's a fascinating book, and we're really lucky to be able to get it on an ebook on his website. Okay, so here's the question that Mark provided for us. Which Academy Award winner is buried next to his first wife, but is buried 9 feet deep instead of the usual 6 feet deep to leave room for his second wife on top of him? So there you are. And we'll see what happens.
All right, I'm watching. I've got my eye on the chat room, and we'll see who comes up with the answer.
You know the answer.
I do, only because you told me, because I had no clue, and it didn't seem like someone I would expect that of. But, hey, Hollywood's full of strangeness. So, just keeping an eye here and watching, and in case anybody missed it, you want to repeat it one more time?
Sure. Okay, which Academy Award winner is buried next to his first wife, but is buried 9 feet deep instead of the usual 6 feet deep to leave room for a second wife on top of him? So thank you to Mark Masick for that, cemeteryguide.com, and we'll see if, I hope somebody comes up with the answer. I'm sure
I do too. I just have this really disgusting mental picture in my head. But that's a whole...
But actually, I didn't know this answer, so I had to ask Mark myself.
You didn't know it either?
No, I didn't.
Wow. I've not heard of anything that you didn't know so far.
I know it's shocking, Marla, but I don't know everything.
It's good that I'm sitting down. Honestly, very good that I'm sitting down. All right, well, while we're waiting for an answer, I'm going to get back to talking, but I will keep an eye on chat, and if somebody puts it in, please let me know. They're saying Mickey Rooney, Clark Gable. No, not that.
Mickey Rooney's not dead.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And somebody else just said that like twice. So, yeah, we're good. See, some of our people know our stuff. Richard Burton, no, Jeff, not Richard Burton. Mm-mm.
That's a good question. That's a very good guess.
It is a very good answer. Yeah, very definitely a good answer. But let's talk about. Hang on a second. Nope. Still getting Richard Burton, Jack Lemmon. Nope, not Jack Lemmon either. But actually, kind of good guesses. So now I gotta go kind of cockeyed. Now I got to keep one eye on the chat and one eye on what we're going to talk about. But let's. Yeah, Jeff, I blinked. Very fun. Yes, I did. But morbid history is like the creepiest kind. Do you know, they do have things in Europe that, well, okay, you were in London, and there's a picture of you with Jeremy, what's his name? The guy that's stuffed?
Oh, Jeremy Bentham, yeah.
Yeah. Was that at all creepy? Because what? They taxidermied him, right?
Well, what I understand, I mean, Jeremy Bentham was the founder. Oh God, people that are gonna kill me for this one because utilitarianism, I think, and he willed his estate to the University College in London with the stipulation that he remained there and he attend all the board meetings of the university. So the university, they didn't have him embalmed, but they had his skeleton. He's in his clothing, in a box, in the lobby, in his clothing, skeleton stuffed, basically with straw, probably. His head was preserved, but I guess they did a really bad job of it, and it was a college prank for people to steal the head. So they ended up taking the head and putting it in a vault. But Madame Tussauds actually made a replica of the head, which sits on his body now. I was fascinated by this thing since I was a kid. I think I saw it in the Guinness Book of World Records or Ripley's Believe It or Not or something. So it was a real treat to actually see it up close because it was such an oddity. And no, again, I didn't get creeped out, but I was certainly fascinated by it, and that's always been most of the time my reaction to seeing, what some would consider horrible things. I'm just really fascinated by it, and I gravitate towards it.
Mm-hmm. Everybody in chat is asking for a hint.
No, nobody's got it yet?
Nope.
Okay.
We need a hint.
Let's see. Anything I say I can think of off the top of my head. Okay, this is obscure.
You're going to make it worse. All right.
I'm trying to think of how I can do. I will throw this number out there, and if this is, okay, I'll just put the number 19 out there, and see if anyone jumps on that.
Oh, I don't.
It might not. I might even be wrong. Never mind. It's a bad hint.
I don't even guess that. I mean, I don't know what 19 refers to.
Yeah. Let's see.
All right. Would it be okay to say that this guy was known both as a singer and an actor?
Yeah. Well, I guess it is okay, Marla.
Because I already did. Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot. All right. Karen is asking for the question again real quick.
Okay, one more time. Which Academy Award winner is buried next to his first wife, but is buried 9 feet deep instead of the usual 6 feet to leave room for his second wife on top of him?
Okay. So, and this guy was a singer/actor.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, that's a dead giveaway.
No pun intended, right? Uh-huh. Yeah, someone didn't like your 19 reference. Obscure.
Somebody didn't?
No, it was obscure. How helpful. No, it wasn't Elvis, it wasn't Sinatra, it wasn't Sammy Davis. But you're getting warmer. All right, let me do it again. Not Sinatra. He lived a nice long life. And he was best buddies with another very iconic actor. I could say more, but that would totally give it away. Well, he and another actor were very, very buddy-buddy best friends for years and years and years, and Ceiling Cat got it. Barbara Duncan. Bing Crosby, guys. Cece, you did it.
Now, the 19 reference was the 19th hole. He died in Spain on a golf course right after he finished a round of golf. So 19th hole is slang for, hitting the bar or the clubhouse after a round of golf. So that's where the 19 came in.
Yay!
I know, it was obscure.
Yes,
okay,
it was.
well, tell Barbara well, I don't know how we're going to do this. So tell her to email me, scott@dearlydepartedtours.com, and we'll hook her up with the tickets.
Okay, excellent.
And thanks again to Mark Masick, cemeteryguide.com. Go there, get his book. I promise you won't regret it.
No, it's a great book. I have it. Read it. Excellent. All right, we've got not a whole lot of time, but there's a couple things I want to talk about really quickly. as far as history goes, when we were talking the other day, you mentioned, now we're talking about places that haven't been torn down, some landmarks, but almost were. And I know, Hollywood Forever Cemetery, where some of the greats were buried, was in jeopardy at the time. But you mentioned that the Hollywood sign, which is shameful because it's probably our most recognized landmark and even has a very poignant ghost story attached to it. Whose half-baked idea was it to even think of tearing it down?
Well, it's sort of odd because when it was erected originally, we all know the story that it was the Hollywood Land Realty Company and it was a gimmick, etc. And the sign was replaced once in 1949, I believe, and then it was just left. It was dilapidated. It was falling apart, earthquakes, the elements, and there was absolutely no care. And you lived in Hollywood, so you remember in 1977, you could barely read it. The letters were half standing. It was an embarrassment. So that's why Hugh Hefner in 1978 started the drive to have the sign replaced. And there it sat, and there it sits still today. It's now protected by the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. You used to be able to walk up to it, and back then when it was in bad shape, people would rip pieces off of it or spray paint on it. So understandably, they're a bit more protective of it. It's just that they're so fiercely protective of it that no one will be able to get to it anymore, which is kind of sad unless you hop the fence and go down there, which I have done. And I touched the H, I touched the O, and I had to scramble up the hill because the helicopters were on the way. But I'm really glad I did it, and I got away with it. But they're very protective of it now. But last year I believe it was that half of the peak was up for sale, or they say it was going up for sale, to the left of the sign. So for all intents and purposes, that land was going to go, and people were going to build on it. And it was ridiculous to think that this iconic sign in Hollywood was in jeopardy again, and Hugh Hefner stepped up again and provided enough money along with the public's donations to save the sign. And I think to save the peak, to keep the sign looking the way it does, I find it ridiculous that so many people that command so many insane salaries couldn't step up and do that. It took Hugh Hefner again to do that. And I think some people may have provided some money for it. But that's like this, again, I'm going to go back to this Debbie Reynolds thing. I find it pathetic that people that have got all that money from Hollywood couldn't step up and make a home for these things and to celebrate Hollywood the way it is. It's sickening to me. So, Hollywood has always been out with the old and with the new, plastic surgery. The kids that are famous now probably don't even know the history of the Hollywood sign or the city that they're making their living with. And it's up to us poor little broke people who are screaming, no, that don't have the money to save these things. It's angering. It really is. I can't emphasize that enough.
I agree. Well, we've got just a couple of minutes remaining, but let's switch gears for a minute and find out what's new on findadeath.com and also with Dearly Departed Tours.
Well, Dearly Departed Tours is still going strong. We have recently changed our route a little bit around just to keep it fresh, and currently working on another Dearly Departed tour. So hopefully there'll be a Dearly Departed 2 in the near future. We can concentrate more on the west side of Los Angeles. We had to stop eventually because we were just going on and on and on, and we could go for hours at a time, but we decided to break it up and hopefully have that tour to offer before sort of the end of July. The Hollywood Movie Tours.com is doing well too. We if you go to Yelp.com, there's some good deals, 2-for-1 tickets if anyone is interested in the Hollywood Movie Tours. We just added the Green Hornet to that, so actually you're watching part of the Green Hornet on screen while you're in front of where it was actually filmed. So it's and that's over 50 films that you could see these things in. So we're really proud of that. Brian and Richard and I, the three of us run the company, and we're all really passionate about what we do. And Finding Death is just plugging along. We've just added another, I think, some really interesting insight on the death of Rock Hudson that we added recently. And So, or I should say, but anyway, it's been, it's a constantly evolving site, and I'm going to try to be more diligent with it because people do like this stuff, and luckily it's given me the strength to be able to launch my tour company. So again, I have to respect it.
Well, yes, you do. And the other thing is that you have some wonderful DVDs out there that are so good, and I'd like to mention that you have some snippets of them out at the Find a Death website, because that's where I was this afternoon, looking at some of the new ones, Dearly Departed TV. So where
that stuff's free. People can just see that for free. And it's just me being really snarky, going on another tour, and just being really bitchy.
Well,
that's
why I loved it. That's because I really get mad at people who try to cash in on stuff they don't know anything about.
At all. I mean, if they're considered authorities, they're paid to be authorities. People that are coming from other countries are trusting them, and they're just blatantly making things up. It's embarrassing. It really is. But fine.
Yeah, and if you want to know what we're talking about, go to www.findadeath.com and click on the video is right there. So where can people? Okay, let's get it again. Your websites. Where can people find you, and also your DVDs and your Rocky Horror Show picture book show?
Oh my gosh, you're bringing up everything. My whole resume.
Where can they get it?
Everything is on Amazon.com. Everything. I mean, you can get Dearly Departed Dearly Departed Volume 1, which is about 18 different stories where we actually got in to Jean Harlow's last home and into the bathroom where Albert Decker spectacularly committed suicide, or accidentally, and Jack Cassidy's apartment where he died in a fire. The 6 Degrees of Helter Skelter, the geographic retelling of the Manson murders, all the way out to Death Valley, from Simi Valley to Death Valley, and that's something I'm really proud of. Those are they're in supermarkets, Walmarts all around the country, but you can get everything at Amazon. And of course, the Rocky Horror from Concept to Cult, something that I worked on when I lived in England that got released. Just the retelling of the Rocky Horror Show and the Rocky Horror Picture Show story. I don't mean the plot of the film, but the actual making of the play and the film, told by the people that actually did it, that we've compiled these interviews. It's all on Amazon, and thank you for letting me bring those up.
Well, yeah, because I love all that stuff, and I need to share. I'm a very giving person. I need to share. Anyway, thank you so much. We've got to run, but thank you so much for staying in one place long enough to spend the past hour here with us. And you've flooded the chat room. I love it. And please come back again, because, there's never anything that we can run out of to talk about.
Well, thank you, Marla, and thank you guys, everyone from ParaX. It's really kind of you to have me on again. I sure appreciate it.
Well, you're making everybody smile, so that's the main thing. So thank you all smilers for listening in tonight, and if you'd like to listen to the show again or download it, you can find it at ParaX On Demand. Just go to www.para-x.com, click on the On Demand tab, and scroll down to either STC or Stirring the Cauldron. Anyway, we've got to run, guys. Thank you. Until next time, blessed be, and merry meet again. Good night.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks. Please join us again next week at the same time for another great guest and more cauldron stirring. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2024. The Mysterioso March by Kevin MacLeod is licensed through Incompetech.com.